Create your resilience habits. Throughout this learning library, I hope you've seen a number of videos now, hopefully all of them, and each of them has tried to nudge you towards behaviors and habits, maybe routines that will help you build your resilience, improve your mental health and well-being, regain your recovery and balance, and ultimately sustain your performance over time. But as hopefully you now know and understand, all the benefits that you could get through these videos will only actually happen if you make behavioral change. And that is what this video is all about. How can I now help you build the habits that you want? So I think the first thing to identify is what not to do. The first thing to get rid of is relying on any form of willpower, motivation, or discipline, which I think we do all too often, don't we? Now, the problem with that is the minute you're tired, you've had a busy week, maybe you haven't slept that well, then suddenly access to those resources, motivation, discipline, and willpower, suddenly seem to evaporate. Your habit fails, and then the risk is you blame yourself for having insufficient willpower. It's not willpower that helps you build habits. Instead, it's having a formula that works. So maybe you can see that as somewhat reassuring. If, for example, you have tried and failed to set up habits in the past, it's not you that was at fault. Instead, you hadn't quite perfected the formula yet. Now, this is what this video is all about. And what I'm going to do is try and demonstrate its actual application by sharing with you how I ultimately used this to instill a morning habit of daily exercise. So, there are 5 steps to the formula of successful habit formation. 5 steps. We're going to go through each one, and I would encourage you to do this as we go through the process. So begin by identifying a habit you want to work on, and then we'll do these 5 steps in sequence so you will have the toolkit for success. Step 1, identify the goal. What is the habit you want to instill? Now, if you've gone through this learning library, there should be an abundance of options. We've covered everything from things like gratitude, meditation, exercise, habits that help you fall asleep quicker, habits that help you switch off and get adequate mental downtime. The point is, don't try and do everything at once. Instead, right now, identify the one habit that you feel would make the biggest difference to your life right now. Step 2, identify the tiniest, smallest version of your desired habit. Let me give you an example. If I want to set up a morning habit of exercise, I've got an exercise bike upstairs. So the tiniest version of me exercising on my exercise bike is me getting on the bike and doing 1 revolution, right? That's not going to get me fit. It's not going to improve my cardiovascular health. It's not going to oxygenate my brain. But it is a nod to a yes, a tick. Because think about what you're trying to do. Early on, you're not necessarily trying to do lots of exercise, if we're working on this example. Instead, you're trying to set up the habit, a daily routine-based habit, a behavior that happens consistently. So that is now your step 2. Based on the habit that you've identified as your goal, what is the tiniest version of that that could possibly be qualified as at least a step in the right direction? To give you another example, if I wanted to go running every day, it could be as little as putting on my running shoes. You see, there is a real art to this. All too often when we set up habits, we are overly ambitious, right? So me going on the exercise bike, it's no good trying to commit to cycling 20k every morning. Instead, you go the opposite. What's the tiniest increment that will enable me to go, yes, that's kind of a tick, that is where success lies. This is really based on the research done by B.J. Fogg, who is a Stanford researcher who has spent a long time studying habits and the science to their formation, and this step is critical. So, my friend, over to you. Do step 2. Do a brainstorm of all the things, perhaps, that could qualify as the tiniest version of your habit, and then choose one. Step 3. Now identify all of your existing daily habits, all of your potential trigger points. You see, there'll be countless things you already do habitually, right? Every single day, there are lots of things you are already doing. I don't know, brushing your teeth. You probably do that at least once a day, right? You don't need to rely on discipline or motivation or willpower to do it because it's habitual. Maybe waking up every morning is in the similar sort of category. It's just happening anyway. Having breakfast. I don't know your relationship with your morning feeding. I have breakfast every single day. I boil the kettle every single morning without fail. And this is critical when I built my exercise habit, every morning I drink a large glass of water. So perhaps you can see where this might be coming in. I'm ultimately identifying really two things now with step 2 and step 3. Remember, step 2 is the tiniest version of my desired habit. Step 3 that we're doing now, all of my existing habits that are already set up. You see, the science is ultimately your ability to pair these two things, but we'll get there in a minute. For now, what I'd like you to do, and this is again another brainstorm, identify all of the points throughout a typical day that you are already engaging in habitual activities. Think about your morning routine. There may be things around at lunch, throughout the afternoon, and there may be things that are more in your evening. Step 4. You now pair your existing habit with your desired habit. So specifically, going back to my example, now I pair the drinking of my water in the morning with my desired habit, getting on my exercise bike and cycling. You see what we're doing here? Now you can probably see this. There are actually cyclists cycling along here. It's not particularly elegant or attractive, but it does the job. Now, this is key. You need to start doing this thing repeatedly. Now remember, because your target habit is currently defined as the smallest possible version, there should be virtually no resistance. Again, learn from my experience. The idea of me waking up every morning and drinking water, that is a given. To what degree is it difficult for me to then subsequently go on my exercise bike and do one rotation? It couldn't be easier. What you're doing is you are eliminating any reasons to not do it. Right. So now this step 4 does actually require some application, right? So make sure that you've got clarity, not just on the smallest version of your habit, which was step 2, but the potential trigger point, right? Your cue starting tomorrow, and then do it. Step 5, celebrate your success. Every time you fulfill your desired habit starting tomorrow, celebrate in one way or another. Now, it could just be a little kind of, nod to yourself, a little pat on the back or something silly like that. One of the best and most efficient ways to do it is to actually track your behavior. Because by tracking, whether it's on an app or a bit of paper or a little checkbox, not only does that give you the objective data, every time you put an X or a tick or you log your success, that in itself provides a little spike of dopamine. And what you're doing there is you are also pairing your desired behavior with an adequate reward, and consequently you start to associate this behavior with a positive state. So, my friend, that is how you now instill the habits that you want. All of the habits that you could now do to refuel and recharge and recover. All of the daily habits, whether they are your morning routines, your afternoon habits, your evening habits that help you regain your sense of resilience. You now hopefully have a formula to guarantee success. Start small and build on your successes. Don't try and change everything at once. It just doesn't work. Make things as easy as they possibly can be. So not only working to very small micro habits, but just do one at a time. Do one at a time, and the minute it becomes habitual, then you can move on to habit number 2. So prioritize and then go through the steps. Remember the 5 steps formula for successful habit formation, which was step 1, identify the goal. What's the habit you want to do? Step 2, what is the tiniest, smallest version of that habit as a behavior? Step 3, identify all the potential trigger points throughout a typical day, as in all of your existing habits. Step 4, pair the two together. Choose the most appropriate existing trigger, based probably on the time of day it's happening, and then pair your desired habit with that. Start doing it. Do it tomorrow. Step 5, reward yourself. Celebrate success. And the easiest way to do that is to track your success over time. Okay, that's how you do it. Stop relying on discipline, motivation, and willpower. Instead, apply the formula. As you do this, I hope you will soon rediscover how actually you are more in control than you may have thought, and consequently, you will be able to build habits that enable you to ultimately improve your experience on an ongoing basis. Enjoy.